Broadsword calling Danny Boy.
Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of Interplanetary I Spy going on here. Today we're having a look at Apollo 14, and I've got a couple of source images up here. The links will be in the description as usual. There's this one, first Earthrise, Apollo 14 image, and there's also this one, Race Against Time. This one's they're both taken out of the window of the Apollo 14 craft at about, I'm guessing here about 100 miles or less above the moon. I couldn't tell you exactly. It doesn't actually tell you in the image or under the image. I'll have the official links here to the NASA page, and I'll try and find the actual official links to each image, because it's quite easy to find these on Google Images, as I've done here. If you just type in Apollo 14 images and go larger than 2 megapixels or something, and then you get some of these larger ones come up. But these are the ones you want to go for, the ones with taken above the surface, either leaving the moon or going to the moon or flying over the moon, because as always there's something to see on the moon. If you look closely and if you look in some of these craters, there's often something interesting, as we've found before. So I've got a bunch of images here, and first of all let's have a look at this thing now. Well, I'll get the source image up first. First thing I did with this one is make a map of the various strange things in the image, and I've just put question marks next to what I think is something interesting. There's a weird structure here. There's another one here. This won't show very well. I appreciate that, because I haven't done anything to this. This is just the raw image with these question marks just saved on top of it. There's a weird structure there. There's this long straight wall type or building type structure here, which is very strange, and also extremely large. That is enormous. This image is probably taken at about 100 or 50 miles above the surface. I'm guessing less than 100 here, probably nearer 50, judging by some of the other images I've looked at. And there's this thing. Now this is really weird, and you can even see this in the raw image like we have here. What looks like a mushroom shaped tower with a sort of mushroom shape at the top here, and a very wide kind of tower column sticking up here, and a base to it as well. And in fact, the more I look at this, the weirder it gets. It seems like this whole thing is built upwards, this whole thing here. Now I'll go over some of these in a bit more detail in a minute, and show you some of the enhancements I've done. But I just thought I'd show you this image as well. This is another Apollo 14 image. Very strange image, this one. Typical of some of the images taken on the moon. Black and white image. It's quite a large format. But I actually think this has been scanned from an original photograph, because if you look closely, you can see all these blotches in here, which are all over the image along the top. So this may well have had something spilt on it. You've got these little blotches here, see? Like someone splashed water on it, or coffee, maybe not coffee, but something like that, water or something. It's got it onto the image. It could be damp. This could have been stored in a cupboard somewhere, and then someone's scanned it and digitized it and put it onto Google Images or onto a website or something. But I thought that was interesting anyway, because it's got all these weird blobs on it, and I'm pretty sure that is photo damage from where it was stored, and obviously that showed up in the copy of the image that's been uploaded. I did spend a lot of time doing photo restoration as a portrait artist. What I would do is often get old photographs, old black and white photographs that are often taken in the 1930s and 1940s, sometimes even older, and then I would have to restore them, and then what I would do then would be do a portrait of the person from the photograph in either pencil or oil paint or acrylic paint. And that's one of the techniques I use. So I am very familiar about photo restoration, and I can recognise signs of stains and things like that quite well. But one thing I thought was even more interesting about this was this photo, part of the photo here of the lander. Now, to me, that looks like it's been pasted on to the original image. I may be wrong, but it seems rather convenient that the LEM or the lander would be right on the top of the horizon there. Nice and easy for someone to cut it out and then paste it onto the image here, because that's a very simple cutout job. And when you see the image in negative, you'll get the point probably a bit more. It does look a bit like it's been pasted onto that part of the image there in the actual photograph. So the actual photograph may be a composite, as I've said with some of the other NASA images of the moon. Often the horizon just looks totally artificial, and if there is anything to be faked, then that's probably where it's going to be, because that's the easiest part of the image to fake, because you've got a nice black line there, or when you see it, you've got a nice clean black line going across, and a very simple image cutout. I mean, this may turn out to be real, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of proper form to this. I mean, I'm not saying this is not a photograph of it, but I'm suggesting that this may be a composite of two photographs that have been pasted together, and this may have come from a different photo. Who knows? The problem is with the Apollo missions, all of them, there were a lot of the images were used for publicity shots, and they were printed by the millions and sent out to people, and they were printed in magazines, and a lot of these images are not necessarily fake, but they have been doctored. And there are lots of examples in the Apollo images of a classic one would be this one here, Apollo 15. No, it's not Apollo 15, sorry. It's in one of these here. It could be Apollo 16. This one here. Now, this is one of the most famous images of an astronaut, and this has appeared in many documentaries where they've talked about it. And this is an example of a doctored image. Now, you can clearly see that the shadow here is facing towards us, so that the sun, and you can see the lens flares in the camera lens here, up here, where the sun is up here towards the center of the image, and you can see it reflecting on the actual camera itself, and you've got these lens flares coming off it here on the left. Now, often you see this image, and those have been edited out. So we know they're doctoring the images straight away because they've edited out the lens flares. And the weird thing about this one, and this is one of my favourite images because of this, is that not only is this part of the image of where the astronaut is, not only has this been heavily doctored, because in fact the body of this person, I'm not sure which guy it is in here, should be much, much darker because it's in heavy shadow. Now, on the moon, because there's no atmosphere, or very, very, very little atmosphere, shadows should appear very black. And like this line here, they should be very black, not this sort of bluey colour here. This has been altered. Now, it looks to me like this is either a composite image, or what they've done is they've masked the body of this astronaut here and then brightened it, and then, or perhaps got two images of the same scene here, and on one image they've drawn round or cut out the astronaut and then brightened the image considerably, or brightened it, then cut him out, and then pasted him onto the other image, so that he looks, you can actually see the detail of his suit here. Now, this should be in heavy dark shadow. All of this should be black, or nearly black. Not this blue colour like we have here, but this black, heavy black shadow. Especially around this chest area here, and his arm here, and his knees and legs here. These should be very, very dark. Now, you can clearly see when you zoom in that in this image you have a silhouette of one of the other astronauts here who's taking the photograph of him. And above that silhouette there, you can see a double light reflection. Now, this may well be one of the reasons why this astronaut suit is lit up like it is, because there's a secondary light source in the image behind the cameraman. And there's the cameraman, and there's the light. Now, I'm not saying this is a light that was taken to the moon, because apparently they didn't take any extra lighting with them. I'm saying that there's something on the horizon here, and it's not the sun that is reflecting in this visor, and it may well be a UFO. And if you Google this, UFOs during Apollo missions, if you just Google that, see how many results you get. You will get millions of results, because there were UFOs that followed them to the moon, and some were present on and above the moon, just above them or just near them on the horizon when they were doing these missions. So this does it go some way to explain, perhaps, some of these strange lighting effects that really shouldn't happen. Now, this may just be a doctored image, and they've made a composite image here, but you can't actually see whether this has been cut out. And if it has been cut out and pasted on, they've done a very good job of it, because you can see the edges here look quite natural around the astronaut here. Now, if this was a cutout or paste job, you'd expect to see a harder edge around here, and it would look a lot more obvious, especially when you zoom in. You'd have a much harder edge to it from the cutout. And in 1972 or 71, when these were taken, they didn't really have the technology to doctor images as easily as we do now. They could do it, of course, but it was a lot more difficult, and it required a great deal more skill and time and effort to do. And this actually doesn't look like it's been pasted on. So this is more likely caused by a secondary light source, which is reflected in this helmet visor here, and may well be a UFO that's reflecting in the visor. It's not in a studio necessarily. A lot of people say that these were all faked, these missions. I don't think so. I actually think they did land there. They landed 5 times on the surface. But I will admit that many of the images do look like they've been heavily doctored, or there are unexplained light sources like we have here. Many of them have strange shadows. But some of the strange shadows can be explained. In some of these images, let me just find. Is it Apollo 15? No. Is it Apollo? Here we go. Now, this might take a second to load up. Now, this is a good example of an image stitch. Now, we get these a lot with Mars images now, where they take a whole bunch of photographs and then they stitch them together in a long panoramic like this. And if you look carefully here, you can see that the shadow here is facing this way. So the light is coming from the bottom right here. And if you look at this here, the shadow is going this way. So the shadow is completely different from this image here, from this part of the image, than it is here. Converging shadows. Now, that doesn't mean that this was faked. What this means is that the images were taken from a single spot, and then the person taking the images is then twisted round or turned round and taken lots more images in a full circle. So this is a 360 degree panoramic, or at least 270 degrees. I couldn't tell you if it goes all the way round. But the reason why some of these shadows are not pointing the same way is that they're taken from a different viewpoint, and then they're stitched together. That, in other words, the camera's moved, making it seem like all the shadows are going the wrong way, if you understand that. So basically you have this in lots of images. Now if I was to crop this part of the image here out of context, then it would look like the image has been faked, but in fact it hasn't. It's taken as a long panoramic, and if you look at some of the Mars images, they have the same phenomena where the shadows don't match. But what you've got to imagine is that you're stood here in the middle, and this whole image is then bent round you either side, so you're like, it's surrounding you. Then the shadows make sense. Now this astronaut here isn't actually facing in that direction. When you figure this out, this whole image would be twisted around. He would actually be facing the other way towards the sun, which is up here. So it's a very distorted view of the surface because it's done in a 360 panoramic. And people who are familiar with the viewers on the Mars Rover's sites and the Curiosity images will realise what I'm talking about here. This is quite common. But if I was to only show this part of the image, like lots of people might do in a documentary or in a film or in a video, then I could say, oh, it's fake. The whole thing's been faked, so he never landed on the moon because this shadow's going this way and this shadow's going that way. But yeah, okay, but you've got to look at the whole image in context. And if I was just to show that on its own, that would be out of context and is not showing the full panoramic. So this is how easy it is to get misled or this is how easy it is to misunderstand these things about the Apollo missions. I'm not defending them NASA all the way here because they do encourage this kind of skepticism and they encourage conspiracy theories because they deliberately doctor the images, and that just encourages people to speculate on the fakery of the whole thing. And I can understand why so many people believe that we never went to the moon, because many of the images are fake, or at least partly faked, or staged, or doctored. But there are many, many thousands of images, and if you go on the main Apollo site mission page, and I'll have links to all of these, and you can check these out. But when you start looking at how many images there are tens of thousands of images. Now, they didn't fake all of them, surely not. They didn't take probably 100,000 images in a studio. It's impossible. They may have done a few. They may have done some reconstructions. It was very common in World War II for one side or another to actually film, like the invasion of Paris was filmed on before they even got there, and some of the great battles that were won in World War II various things were staged, where various flags were put on various buildings on top of various mountains. They were often redone afterwards, or even done before the battle even took place, and this was quite common for the military to do. So the same could be said of some of the Apollo images. Some of them probably were staged either after the mission or before the mission for publicity shots, and these would go in your magazines and be plastered all over the place, and were often staged with stage lighting and such things. So let's crack on. I'm diversing a little bit from what I'm trying to say here. There was this thing here, which I was on about earlier, the mushroom-shaped tower. And when you enhance it, you can see it a bit clearer. But what I'll do, I'll put some more clips of some of these things in at the end of the video and show them, and I'll try and highlight them a bit and enhance them a bit more so you can see a bit more, because you can't really tell what that is. But there is a mushroom-shaped tower structure here, and there's a square structure here and here also. And this whole thing may be a part of a structure that comes right down to here. So I'll do some extra enhancements and try and pull that out for you so you can see a bit more detail there. I did do some edits of it here, which I'll show you. I just drew around it very, very crudely there, but I didn't do it very large, so you're not going to see any detail there. So it just gives you an idea of the shape of it, that does. So I'll have more in at the end. I think that pretty much covers it with this. There were other things in this image. Let's quickly have a look at the source image here. There was this long straight structure. I'll put that in at the end, which is enormous. That's probably miles long, this thing here, and it's very straight, like a ridge going along a ridge there. And there's some weird stuff, like I said earlier, in some of these craters that look like structures. So I'll put those in at the end. The tower was the main thing really with this one. And also the shadow thing. A lot of people think because shadows don't match, it means that they never went to the moon. That it doesn't mean anything of the sort. You really need to know a little bit more about some of these images before you start making snap judgments about these things. I'm not saying all these images are for real. Some of them are probably staged or doctored, as I've said before. But that doesn't mean they didn't go to the moon. Just because some dollar bills are fake doesn't mean you throw your money away. Okay? Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.